Hello. Hello, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm gonna share my screen now. Can everyone see the slide? Yep. All right. Yes. Okay. So some of you may have known me because I used to teach some of you like Toriba. And I think I'm waiting for Atsushi as well. But for those of you who have not known me, welcome everyone to tonight's webinar. And it's nice meeting you all. It's 8:35 now in Australia. And for those who have known me, it's nice seeing you again. Okay. So before I start my presentation, so the title is It Really an Emergency? A Patient's Journey Through Emergency Department, or ED. So I'd like to introduce myself briefly. All right. So first, so about myself. So I moved to Japan in 2003 to study or to do research regarding viruses of Kuruma ebi. So I did that in Tsukuba for a year. While I was doing that research, I did a part-time job at De La Cruz Company Limited as a governess, a part-time governess. I enjoyed teaching, so I decided to become a full-time governess in 2004. So as Miles mentioned, aside from being a full-time governess, I also held human resources department. So that was around 10 years. I met my husband in 2010 and then got married in 2012 in the Philippines. So this is our picture. As you could see, the theme was Sakura. So that's my love for Japan. And in fact, Mr. Sasaki went to the Philippines to see my wedding because he's one of our godfather. So my husband lived at that time in Adelaide, South Australia. So we were away, or well, apart for 2 years. But then I said, it's time to move to Adelaide to be with him. So hence, I moved to South Australia in 2014. Now, I was thinking of what to do next in my chapter in life. Then I decided to be a nurse. So who would believe that I would become a nurse? So I graduated in 2018. And since then, I've been working as a registered nurse in an emergency department. So hence the title of my presentation. Okay. So in Australia, of course, I have found new interests and hobbies, just like sustainability, like tiny houses. Related to that is gardening. So this is our garden, and that was me tending to the plants. So we also enjoy, my husband and I enjoy walking by the beach. Beaches actually is like 15 to 20 minutes by car. So I also do some Pilates now. So I will show you some. Okay, oops, not yet. I think I did not say about this, the slide. I missed this one. I want to touch this. Let's go back to that. So my love for Japan initially was Naruto, the anime. And then I also like Japanese TV series. And I fell in love with Kintaku, still until now. And also I like Japanese culture. So the food, places, and most especially the customer service, which I think so far, Japanese customer service is excellent. So that is something good about Japan. So let's fast track. So we've already touched on that. Now, those are some of the information about me. Now let's focus on the presentation itself. So I hope I won't bore you with too technical information. I'm going to try my best to bring it down to the layman's term. So as I've said, I've been working in the emergency department, and I want to share some information about South Australia, Adelaide, through my lenses, through my eyes, and also look into the journey of a patient through ED. The flow would be a little bit about the city that I live in, a patient journey, and also the role of an ED nurse, and then the summary. So let's go to South Australia, or Adelaide. So as you may know, it is one of the states in Australia, and Adelaide is the capital city. The residents are called, or the people living in Adelaide are called Adelaidean. Okay, so as you probably may know in history, the first people in Australia are called the Aboriginal people, or Aborigines. And each state has their own traditional owner. And in South Australia, it is called the Kaurna people. Okay. So Adelaide is the third most livable city in the world. So I encourage you to come to Adelaide. That's the 2021 Economist. But recently as well, South Australia is the festival state of Australia. So we have the Adelaide Festival, the Oz Asia Festival. If you like bicycles, we have also the Tour Down Under, like the France, Tour de France, if you're familiar with that. And then, as I've mentioned, I think the reason why it is the third most livable city in the world is that the cost of living is affordable. Also, it is a car-dominated society and a bike-friendly as well. So there is a specific bike lane only for bicycle riders. Although the danger of that is you ride together with the cars, just side by side. That's why it's a must that you have to wear helmets. Unlike in Japan, that it's okay not to wear, or even you can wear handle an umbrella or carry an umbrella on the right and then steering the handle on the left arm or hand. Okay, oops. Okay, also it is a disability friendly place. You can see ramps, toilets, parking spaces, and any other facilities. Aside from that, I think not only in South Australia, but Australia itself, you could see a lot of restaurants, cuisines from different countries around the world. So Portuguese, Mexican, Vietnamese, Afghan, anything around the world. So I was open to different, this is the taste of Ethiopian dessert or something like that. So it's more multicultural. South Australia is also famous for wines. Unfortunately, I'm not an alcohol drinker just like Miles. I'm not sure if she still drinks a lot. So I can't vouch for any or recommend any wine to you. So this is the Arenberg Cube, and you could see the vineyard as well. So during break time in offices or meetings, we call it morning tea or afternoon tea, and then lunches. They are fun, or we are fond of having like cold cuts, dried fruits, which I'm still getting used to it. So South Australia, or Australia, is also a desert country. Lots of trees, so that's why we are prone to bushfire. which is the downside of it. Just like in Japan, people in Japan are prepared for earthquakes, right? Here, we are bushfire ready. So we are always prepared when there is bushfire. Houses. So this is a typical South Australian house. This is not our house, mind you. Our house is smaller than that. So front, and then this is the backyard. So backyard for Australians are important. So this is where the entertaining, playing, drinking happen. So they usually have a small frontage, they call it, but backyard are bigger. When you enter university, it's not mandatory to do that, just like Japan, but you can apply for a loan. So, and then it's compared to the US, it's the interest rates are not that high. So, which is, I think, better. And you will only pay it once you've got a job. So that's the university loan. Also, Australians love camping, and we've been to different places as well. So the following slides, I will show you some pictures from my phone. Pardon for the blurredness of some of them because they are from my phone. So on the right is Glenelg Beach or Jetty. This is a famous beach near our house where we always go to. On the left is the Adelaide Botanic Garden. Next, so this is me and my husband having breakfast or brekkie in front of the beach. And then we also have like fireworks in New Year's Eve, but I think Japan has more extravagant fireworks. Again, beach, and this is our backyard, and that's me in the photo. Okay, all right. In Australia, I think in Japan, you have the soccer sport. Here it's called football or footy. So Adelaide Oval on the left, and then we also have like almond blossom on the right, which is like cherry blossom in Japan. Some trekking areas, and then this is Australia Day Parade. So Japan's flag and then the Australian flag. Botanic Mount Lofty, so the autumn in Mount Lofty, and then Granite Island. And then some trees, that's why we're prone to bushfire. And then on the left, I'm not sure if you could read the Momotaro. Can you read the Momotaro on the left? Yep. So this is one of the statues in the gardens that we visited. And I took a picture of that just to remember Japan. All right, so that concludes the information about Australia. I'll move on now and focus on the patient's journey through ED. So I will discuss subtopics just like Australian healthcare system, the challenges in health system. So when I say SA, it's South Australia, okay? A patient journey through ED, and my role as an emergency nurse. Okay, so in Australia, we have what you call a Medicare system. It is a universal public health insurance scheme wherein it's free or subsidized. So when you go to hospitals, when you see specialists and you have medications, they're all free or subsidized by the government. So in the photo, so the center of that is the patient. So we have like holistic care. The first contact would be the general practice or the GP. And then the GP then refers the patient to pharmacists, other professionals, which are called the primary healthcare or health networks. Oops, sorry. The GP or the GP as well refer patients to aged care when needed, or hospitals, which can be public or private. So public hospitals are subsidized by majority of the federal budget and then the state government. Okay. Now, of course, each country or each state has their own problems or challenges, especially in the healthcare system. I forgot to mention that in South Australia, there is also like an aging population as well. So that's also one challenge that we need to face here. I think the same in Japan. So there is what you call hospital ramping. So this is an SA ambulance car. So you could see that they are queuing or lining up. Each car has a patient inside that. So which means that patients can be dying, can be very, very sick, but they have to wait for a long time to enter the emergency department. So that's one of the challenge. Attached to that or associated with that is, as I've mentioned, is an aging society. So there is an increased demand already in the healthcare community. Okay. So then also there is a high reliance on public hospitals emergency departments. So this is an example of a public hospital wherein the people are lining up to see a doctor. So not a good sight. Those were pre-COVID. Enter COVID, we have another challenge, which was living with COVID. This is in May. So we have still new cases and the statistics are there. You can see it every day as well. So, but the government or the state government is doing its best to alleviate or solve the challenges, but I won't discuss that in detail. Okay, let's move on to the patient journey itself. So this chart is an ideal journey of a patient. It's called a 2:1:1 model, wherein the patient, once they enter the emergency department, will have at least like 4 hours until they get discharged. So that's an ideal. I will discuss those in details, but it's, as I've said, it's an ideal model so that we have to achieve. So let's have a look into the journey itself. So a patient then presents to the triage nurse. We call them walk-ins because some patients, as I've said, can be brought to the emergency department by ambulance. So I will just focus on the walk-ins. So triage, if you probably have heard, it's a French word meaning to sort or separate. The triage nurse asks this question: what brought you here today? Or what are your symptoms? What's your problem? And then assigns a category based on the severity of symptoms. From the photo, you can see being the worst makes you first. Okay, so a little bit of information about triage. So in Australia, we follow the Australasian triage system, or called the ATS. I think you may probably be aware, during disaster, you assign like color-coded category, right? I'm not sure if that's the same in Japan, but in Australia, we follow now the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it's numerical. So the Australian triage system is actually very detailed, but I would like you to focus on just what it is, what number corresponds to what description, and when does the patient need to be seen? So this is just an example. So if you're a Cat1, category 1, you need to be seen immediately, meaning you're very, very sick that you can die. 2, emergency, 10 minutes, within 10 minutes. 3, urgent, within 30. 4, semi-urgent or 60. 5, non-urgent, within 2 hours. So this is just guidelines, but most likely we follow the 1 and 2. Okay? So when the triage nurse assigns a category, the patient then moves to the next window, which is the administration clerk, to get the details. Okay? So just an example of the chart again, the triage assessment. So if you're a Cat1, the triage nurse escorts the patient to the resuscitation area. So on a wheelchair, okay? Not walk in, not like, okay, who are you? Because they are sick. Cat2 to acute, Cat3 waiting area, and so on. So the triage nurse suggests to team leader where to allocate each patient. However, the triage nurse can also decide which patient goes to which room, depending again on the category. Okay. So next, so I will focus now on the patient with a Cat1. So of course, they are very sick. Sometimes they collapse. So they are unconscious, meaning no airway. So they can be brought in by wheelchair or on a bed. So the patient then is wheeled into a resuscitation room. There's a bed, all the equipment surround the patient. The patient then is, the clothing is removed to expose from head to toe. Of course, it's covered by a gown for privacy as well and dignity. And where all the tests are done, like the ECG, vital signs, bloods. Occasionally, the nurses can interview the patient if they can speak. However, if they cannot, then a relative or a family member is interviewed. So if you recall, Cat1 needs to be seen immediately, okay? During this time, the patient is seen by the medical officer or the doctor. Sometimes we do it together. So because we need the immediate treatment for this patient, then the doctor interviews while the nurses would do all their stuff. So then the patient is ordered, depending on their case, different tests, and then fluids, medications, and other things that are needed. So that is Cat1. The doctor needs to make a plan immediately because that's critical. Now, how about category 2 to 5? So basically, the flow would be the same as category 1. The only difference is the timeline. Okay? So, and the place as well. So Cat1 goes to resus or resuscitation room, while Cat2 to 3, acute area. So not very big cubicle compared to the resus bay. Then Cat4 and 5 is brought to fast track areas wherein you could see chairs instead of beds. And then all the equipment surround the patient as well. So what is category 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 presentations? I'm going to give you an example. I think some of you may have an idea because you know heart attack, right? So that is category 1 immediately. Because as we say, time is gold. So we have to treat the patient quickly. So Cat 2 is like bleeding, severe bleeding. Cat 3, some difficulty breathing or some head injury. Cat 4, sprained ankle. And Cat 5, cuts or common cold. So these are just examples. So there are many examples that you can think of. But basically, these are the main presentations of patients. Okay. Now, so after the tests have been ordered, have been done, then the doctor waits for the results, right? For category 1, that's quick. For Cat 2 to 5, they can just wait. Hence, a plan is made by the doctor whether to admit the patient under a specialist. The patient stays overnight to review the next day, transfer to another hospital, or discharge. Okay, now let's go to each one by one. When a patient is admitted, it's a process. So the bed is requested, bed is assigned, communicating with the ward if they are ready for transfer, and we hand over the patient to them. On the other side, if the patient gets discharged or go back to their home or nursing home, we give all of these to the patient or to the relative of a patient. Doctor's letter also is faxed to the GP. If you could recall, I told you the main contact or the primary contact of patient here is the GP, is through the GP. Then some instructions, some medications if needed, and sometimes referral to a specialist. Okay, now that's the end of the journey of a patient, starting from the door of the emergency until they get admitted or discharged. Again, I will go back to the 2:1:1 model, which we try to achieve. But in most cases, sometimes it doesn't happen, okay? Now, what is then my role in the emergency department? So we have many roles, but I will only focus on the ones with the red stars. So obviously, we provide or give care, treatment, reassurance. We also collaborate with the patient, the carer or the relative, and also some professionals. We advocate for the patient or speak up for the patient because sometimes they cannot say what they wish, or sometimes we know them better because we have longer exposure or time with them than the doctors. So we have to speak up for them. This patient needs pain relief now. This patient is vomiting. We have to give something and things like that. So that's advocating. And also educating. So during the time that they are in the emergency department until they get discharged, we educate them so that they won't go back to emergency and they will have a good experience as well. Now, of course, if you have been to the emergency department, maybe you may be afraid, maybe emotional, anxious, because you don't know what's happening to you, and very, very sick or ill. But as an ED nurse, we have to make a positive experience to the patients. Just like in DCEC, we have to create positive experience for learners, right? To learn English at the same time, enjoy learning English. So we also have the same responsibility. But how do we achieve that? So as nurses, we have to give care and treatment timely. Not like the vomits are finished and that's the time that we give the medication. That's too late. Okay? We also have to empathize and show compassion to the patient and relatives. Listen to them. Advocate for them. And also we have to communicate effectively to the patient and the carers. If those three things are nurtured in the emergency department, they would have better outcomes. And that's what we want to achieve. Okay? All right. So that's actually concludes the journey of a patient and my role as an ED nurse. Now, to end my presentation, this is a slide that I keep on holding to. I started in 2018 as an emergency nurse. I still want to look at this quote from time to time, because when you're a nurse, you know that every day you will touch a life, or a life will touch yours. So tonight, I hope that you have learned new things about South Australia, learned the Australian healthcare system, learned the journey of a patient through ED, and learned the role of a nurse. Thank you. References include here.
Thank you very much, Mariane, for that very well explained journey of the patient from the start until finish. All right, now let's see. Do we have